I'm a traditional hunter and a food gatherer for my family and a storyteller. And so my responsibility as a storyteller is to share and to remember. And so I just want to share a few things that came to me on my drive up from Washington. I live in Washington right now with Yakima and the Wanama people. And so some of the old teachings, the things that's been shared with me is that in the beginning, when we were young people, just young ones, we couldn't take care of ourselves. We couldn't take care of ourselves. We couldn't feed ourselves. They say that Salmon was the first one that stood up for us. He stood up and said, you know what? I'll feed these young ones. I'll take care of these young ones. Give myself to them. And then our deer and our elk, they stood up. They said, I will feed these young ones. I'll help them. I'll take care of them. And then all of our roots that come up, they said, we'll take care of these young ones too. We'll feed them, help them, give them medicine. Then our berries, we'll stand up. We'll take care of these young ones, feed them, give them food, medicine. And so all of these animals, they stood up for us, to feed us, to take care of us. And so now we're at a different time in this world where people, our mind, and our technological capabilities, you know, the radiation, that's not a Japanese thing. The pipelines, that's not a First Nations thing. All of the fracking that's going on down in the United States, that's not our tribal thing. These things are so destructive now, and they spread out so far that they're a worldwide family thing. You know, they're a community thing. They are our thing. They're going to affect all of us. If it affects the water, it's going to affect our sound. If it affects the air, it's going to affect all of us. So this is our thing. Whether you're First Nations, non-Indian, Mexican, white, it doesn't matter. It's our thing. But we have a responsibility and an obligation to stand up, warrior up. And so I ask you, warrior up today. Thank you.
She recently mastered email. I travel a lot, so we email back and forth, and that's how we stay in touch. And she sent me a note just after Christmas mentioning that her favorite food is spot prawns, and mentioning that if this tanker expansion goes through, that could put her favorite seafood in jeopardy. And as a good Japanese grandson, I know how to read between the lines. So I had a talk with her, and I decided to move into this full time. So starting in March, I'm going to be working full time on the oil tanker proposals. And I guess I'm doing this, and we're here, and I do this work because we recognized exactly what people have known here for thousands of years, which is this inlet is a wonderful place to live. And that's why we came here about 100 years ago. And my grandmother tells me these stories about taking a rowboat over to picnic on the North Shore before there were bridges. She was born in 23, so this would have been late 1920s. And she describes Burrard Inlet being so clear that you can see to the bottom and see the crabs scuttling along. And she talks about this wall of salal and cedar and spruce going all the way up to the snow. And that's not so long ago. You know, the lady that remembers this is sitting a few miles away in her kitchen. And tells me about taking the streetcar down to English Bay and taking these burlap sacks and just gathering smelt out of the surf and cockles off the rocks and taking those back to cook. And she describes this feeling of shame, and they would take these bags full of food back to the back of the streetcar because they were worried that people would think it was smelly. And I just can't imagine being ashamed of that. And I think that I do this work because I'm not just interested in preserving what we've got or stopping the destruction where it's at. I actually see signs that things are coming back. And I think that the world that she grew up in is not that far away. And so when you read about grizzly bears coming down into the Pitt River system after hundreds of years, if you talk about the orcas that come and you see the people in their office towers tweeting pictures of orcas in Burrard Inlet, the orcas aren't just there to look around, they're there because there's food. I was up last summer shooting in Indian Arm, and you remember the salmon, the pink salmon were almost jumping into the boat? I think if we give things a chance, things can get better. They are getting better. It's not just about stopping things where they're at. And so, my grandma's not going to be around forever, but, we've been here for 4 generations, and I plan to be here for at least another 4. And I'd like my kids to be able to go down and take public transit to the beach and just gather food. I mean, we're here because it's a good place to live. So I work as a journalist, and I think a lot about public opinion and the public conversation, and I'm just interested in a sort of informal poll tonight. I'm wondering how many people here want to stop those oil tankers, want to stop the Kinder Morgan proposal from going through? How many people believe it's going to happen anyway?
Yeah.
How many people believe that despite the fact that every person in this room just put their hands up, it's just going to happen, they're just going to steamroll us, put the project through? Thank you. That's really cool to see. Because when you poll the general public, what you find is that 2/3 of the people in this province believe that this is a bad idea. And yet 2/3 of the people in this province believe it's going to happen anyway. And that speaks to me of a gap. And I think that's our responsibility here tonight, is to empower those people who agree with us to believe that they have some agency as citizens or as members of these nations in fulfilling the will of the people. And so as neighbors and as friends, I invite you to think about ways that you can empower those who believe that they have no say in these projects. Thank you very much.
They're being forced to, because the rebuilding of these communities has actually been turned over to some of the worst corporations in that country. And these corporations are now telling these people that their land has no value and they have no right to return for that land. So they're organizing in gyms just like this, essentially to fight the same fight. And that's what I'm reminded of when I come into a space like this, and that's what I'm reminded of, honestly, every time I hear Ruben speak, because he never fails to include not just the word climate change, but the recognition that it's a human thing that's happening right now. And so, if I had to answer the question of why I'm choosing to stand with the Tsleil-Waututh Nation, I really don't see that I have a choice. And when I hear Ruben speak, when I hear the people of this community speak, they speak as though it is the same struggle. And so, that's why I'm here and why I'm honored to be here. So, thank you.
I first came to learn about the tar sands when I was living back in Ottawa, and Ruby showed me photos of Fort McMurray and people who were dying of cancer, who were losing their hair because of the poison in the rivers, and came to learn about the communities who were completely being destroyed by tar sands. Then went to climate change conference And then right after that, our Minister of Environment at the time got up and rejected Kyoto. And it was just so frustrating to see what our government is doing, the Canadian government's stance, despite the fact that people are losing their homes, like in the Philippines, and meanwhile at the source, people are dying of cancer. And then to see what's happening here, I first came to learn about it during the water ceremony, which I'm so grateful to the Tsleil-Waututh Nation for hosting.